Welcome to the Guitar Department. My name is Joe Alton. I'm your host. This week we're going to be talking about the song Walk This Way by Aerosmith. We're going to have part 3 in our cage system talking about the E shape. And in the tone zone, we've got the Way Huge Swollen Pickle Mini Mach 3. Welcome to the Guitar Department. The song Walk This Way by Aerosmith consists of 3 parts. We have an intro, a verse, and a chorus, and that's basically it. So we're going to talk about each of those 3 parts one at a time, starting with the intro, and this part reprises several times throughout the song. The way it sounds is like this. And that would lead us right into the verse. Now, the way I played that is with a combination of techniques. First off, on the right hand, you're going to alternate pick most of this entire song, actually. So this first one, we're going to go down, up, just like that. On the left hand, we're playing the open A string, we're playing the B flat on the A string on the 1st fret, and then a B on the 2nd fret. Then we're just going to flatten off, or rather than flatten, we're going to roll off of that B onto the E on the next string down. So you don't want to flatten out entirely because you'll end up with both notes ringing at the same time. And what you want is to have those notes to ring out individually so that no 2 notes ring out together. Then you're going to do that a second time. You wrap it up with that open E string. Just like that. And that's pointer and middle finger mostly. Then it happens a second time, but this time there's a twist. We're going to do the same 0, 1, 2. Roll off of that onto that next string. Do it again. But instead of going straight to the 0 on the top string, we're going to pull off from a 3, like that, and then grab that E on the D string of the 2nd fret. So it'll end up sounding like this. Like that. And that's our combination. There's the first one. And that's the second one. The third time it happens, it's the same as the first one. And then the fourth time, just like that. So we're going to take our initial riff, play it twice just like that, like we have all 3 other times, and then instead of going to either the E string or the pull-off, we're going to play a power chord. An A power chord to be exact, with the open A string and the 2nd fret of the next 2 strings, the D string and the G string. And notice that I slid that up sort of to the 7th-ish fret, and that lands us into the verse part. Now, before we actually talk about the verse part, I should mention that when this part reprises, this intro part, there is a slight variation on it that we should probably talk about before we move on. And that is, when it comes back to it after the verse, it plays the first one the same way it just did. And then the second one goes like that. So it has sort of a combination of our 2 endings. We have the 0 on the top string, and then we have the pull-off from the 3 to the 0 on the E string, and then down to that E an octave down on the D string. So, and then right back into it again. So that reprise will sound like this. The verse parts of Walk This Way are very pinky heavy. And what we're about to do with it is really just a standard blues shuffle in a power chord shape up on C of the top string. So we're on the 8th fret with the power chord. And we're going to use our pinky to reach up to grab a 12 on the A string. And then we're also going to use it to reach the 13. Now, what that actually does is it takes your C and your G, which are an interval called an open fifth, and it adds in the 6th. And then when you go to the 13, the B flat, it adds the dominant 7th. This is a standard sort of blues shuffle. But what they do with it here is a little more right hand intensive too. The actual lick sounds like this. So let's break down what just happened there. First, we start with our open C chord, our open C power chord, and we're going to play just the top string 3 times. 1, 2, 3, then down to that 10th fret with the 3rd finger on the A string. And then back to that 8 for 2 more hits on the top string, and then the 12 takes over with the pinky on the A string, which is the octave of the A. Now at that point, we're going to go back to our C for 2 more hits, and then we have a little bit of a more tricky part. We're going to reach down for the octave of C on the 10th fret, roll off of that just like we did down here in the intro, back up to that G, like that, and then here's where the pinky gets really intense. We're going to reach up to 13, and you're going to pull off from the 13 to the 8, or to the 10, excuse me, and then again from the 12. Kind of a tricky lick to play. If you start it slow enough and you exercise your pinky and you work on stretching that out, you should be able to get it to ring out. Now what happened there is I played the same riff 7 times in a row, which is what happens for each verse. And then the 8th time, we have our interjection that leads us back into that intro riff again. And what I did is I played the same riff, and then when you get to the 2 10s, 10, 10, jump back down to the A power chord, and that's enough to wash away the harmony that we have from the key of C that we were in and bring us back into this E riff. So, that whole riff sounds like this. And then back into the intro riff with the variation. Now the only part that's left in Walk This Way is the chorus part. And luckily, if you can play the verse part, the chorus part is actually a little bit more of a simplified version of the same idea. And here's what it is. We're going to go back up to that C power chord, and we're going to use our pinky again on the 12 and the 13, but we're going to keep it just to a few strums. Just like that. So 3 hits, 8 and 10 together, 8 and 12 together, and 8 and 13 together. And just let that ring out, and then down a string, So this time we're on F. Then back up to the C. Back down a string to the A string. Back up. And that's it for the rhythm part. Now, while that's happening, Joe Perry is interjecting with this interval, which you'll hear as sort of a call and answer to the phrase walk this way. You'll hear the vocals walk this way and then talk this way. So the way that rhythm comes in, now, you're not actually going to play both parts, ideally. You would have one person holding onto the power chord and another guitar player playing just this interval over top of it. But if you do need to play both, there is a way to get it done. And what you will do is bar that 10th or that 8th fret, and then reach down with either your second or third finger while your pinky is on the 13th fret. It is possible to do, but it's a lot more difficult, and if you have a second guitar player, there's simply no need to. So, my advice is to keep them as separate parts. But if you do find yourself in a pinch, that's how I would recommend you do it. So now it's time for part 3 of our Caged System series, and today we're going to talk about the E form. And basically, to recap what caged actually is, we had our first segment discussing how to take each of these chords, the ones that spell out the word caged, C, A, G, E, and D. Each of those is a movable shape based off of the open chord that it's based on. And last week we talked about how to take that G shape and turn it into first a pentatonic scale, and a minor pentatonic shape, and then eventually how to turn it into a diatonic major position. This week we're going to do the same thing, but with the E chord. So, to start from the beginning, this is your E chord, with the 2 fingers on the 2nd fret of the A and the D strings, and your pointer finger on the G sharp, the 1st fret of the G string. Gives us a nice, beautiful open E chord. What we're going to do is move that up a fret, refinger this so that we're using our middle finger, ring finger, and pinky to cover those frets, and that frees up our pointer finger to bar that 1st fret. And once we've got that 1st fret barred, we have an F chord, and an F chord has no open strings in it. So once we have an F chord, we can move that chord to wherever we need it, depending on the letter name of the chord we're looking for. So what I just did is I moved it from F to G. We can really move it anywhere though. Here's A, B flat, C. We're going to stick with G for the time being because it's a nice position with which to demonstrate the shape that we're going to be playing. And what we're going to do is turn that first into a major pentatonic scale. Our position actually starts in the 2nd fret. Remember, the position is based on whatever fret your pointer finger is playing. So we're going to start with the middle finger on this G on the 3rd fret. And play the 3rd fret there, and then the 5th fret on the same string. Down a string will bring us to the 2nd fret, and then up to the 5th fret again. And then down a string for the same 2 frets again. It'll be 2 and 5. And that should sound just like the open version of the major pentatonic that we did last time. So here we have the same notes that we played as an open scale a second ago, but now it's in a closed shape. And since we have a closed pattern, that also means that we can move it to wherever we need. But first, let's fill out the rest of the pattern. We've got 3rd fret to the 5th fret, then the pointer on the 2nd fret to the pinky on the 5th fret. Same on the next string. On the D string, it'll be 2nd fret with the pointer to the pinky on the 5th fret. Then we're going to go down again, and it'll be 2nd fret to 3rd finger on the 4th fret. And then we're going to move up. I'm going to use my middle finger to stay in position, but it'll be the 3rd fret, and then the 5th fret, and then just the 3rd fret on the bottom string. And if you want to, you can also add the 5 on the bottom string also, the high E string. Now, we've got our movable pentatonic pattern. And generally the logic is that when you move up to this 3rd fret, you'll actually shift positions and use your pointer finger on it rather than using your middle finger and pinky. But when you're rocking out, you might want to move up and then come back down to the 2nd fret when you hit that G string. Now, to get the minor pentatonic out of this, we just sort of have to treat it as though our root is E, which in this case is the open string. But rather than go to the open string, we're going to keep it closed and use the 6th of the pentatonic. So the notes that we have here are G, A, B, D, E, and then it all starts over at G. So if you start on that E, we have that minor pentatonic feel. And that'll come in useful when you're trying to drift from the blues scale into this sort of extended form. And it gives you a little bit more range. And that's sort of the goal of using these positions as scales, is that you can drift from one position into the next and still know where all the notes are. So what we're going to do now is fill in the rest of the notes and turn it into a diatonic major scale. And to do that, we're going to start 1 fret lower. Our root is still the G. This is still a G major scale that we're about to show. But we're going to start on the 2nd fret, on the F sharp, the leading tone 7th. So we've got the same 3 and 5 afterwards, 2, 3, 5. And the next string, we have the same 2 that we had in the pentatonic. But now we're going to add the C on the 3rd fret. So 2, 3, 5 again. Remember that 5 is the same D that we had from the pentatonic. Then we move down a string, and we've got the E and that F sharp, which is the note we started on. And then we're going to go to the G. So that gives us this pattern. 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4, 5. And if you continue onward from there, and I recommend you do, you'll go 2, 4, 5 on the next string. And then 3, 5 on the 2nd string. And that'll give us our D and our E. And then down another string will give us the F sharp and the G. And then again, if you want to add that A. Again, since we don't have any open strings, we can move that position to wherever we need. If I start in this position, in 2nd position, our root is on the 3rd fret, and that's a G. But if we were in, say, the key of A, I would move the whole thing up parallel so that my middle finger was on the A string. And that would give us both the A chord based on that E shape and the corresponding pentatonic and the corresponding major diatonic scale. And that gives us an entire position that we can use, and we can actually connect that to our G shape. So in the key of A, the G shape would be down here. And then to move that up, so we've got a total of 6 frets that we can play through seamlessly without ever drifting off of the patterns that we already know. One based on the chord G, and the other one based on the chord E, but using both of them to play an A scale and an A chord. And that's the usefulness of the cage system, is that you can stay diatonic, moving completely throughout the neck. Next time, we'll be talking about the D shape and how it connects to the E shape and the G shape to form even more frets until we end up having one giant pattern that covers the entire neck. So be sure to check out the next episode when we cover the D shape in the cage system. And now it's time for the lick of the week. And for this week, we've chosen the first lick from Joe Perry's first solo in Walk This Way. It's a basic minor pentatonic blues scale lick with a bit of some bending and some embellishments along the way. Here's what it sounds like. And here's how we break that down. We start with the 10th fret on the high E string. And we're going to give that a half step bend, which is to say that we're going to make the 10 sound like an 11. Now, the particular type of bend that he's using here is what I've referred to as a stop bend. It's sort of a Chuck Berry trick. But you're going to take the 10, bend it until it sounds like an 11, do a half step bend, and then stop it with the pad of your finger while it's bent. That way you hear the note come up, but you never hear the note come back down. And we're going to use that trick a couple times in this lick. What follows after that 10, that bent 10, you're going to take the 8th fret with your pointer finger and hammer on and pull off from the 11th fret. So we're going to go 8, 11, 8. So the bend, then we go up a string to the 11th fret, back down a string to the 8th fret, and then back to the 2nd string for this time a whole step bend. What that means is that we want to make the 11 sound like the 8 we just played. Or to put it another way, we want to make the 11 sound like a 13 on the same string. Just like that. From there, we have a basic run downward through the blues scale, starting on the 8, up to the 11, down to the 8 on the same string, up a string to the 11th fret, and this is our blues note, the one that separates this from the pentatonic scale, down another fret to the 10th fret, down to the 8th fret. So, just like that. Once we're on this 8th fret, we're going to play the 10 and the 8, and then the 10 again, just like this. So it'll go 8, 11, 8, 11, 10, 8, 10, 8, back to 10. And then we're going to pluck that 10 one more time, the one that we're already on, and we're going to give it another bend, the same way that we bent that first note. So you're going to make the 10 sound like a 12. This is a whole step bend is what they would refer to that as. And then you're going to stop the bend with the pad of your finger while it's bent, bring it back to its original position, and your next note is an 8, which I encourage you to shake. And give a little bit of vibrato to. And then it rounds itself off with the 10th fret on the D string. which is the root of our pentatonic scale, or in this case, our blues scale. So we're using a bit of an approach tone on that initial 10 to bend into the 11, but otherwise we're just using a straight blues scale. To do that one more time slowly. Our pedal of the week this week is the Way Huge Swollen Pickle Jumbo Fuzz Mach 3. And this thing is amazing. Let me click it on. You're starting off with the classic Way Huge Swollen Pickle sound. And that's what we've got here. Just clicked it on. Very classic fuzz. Now, our three knobs are Loudness, which is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll give you an example. Thing can get pretty gnarly pretty quick. You see it's set pretty low as it stands, so if you need to use it as a boost or to sound like a broken amp, turn that up a little bit and it gives you that nice extra crunch that you might be looking for. We've got our sustain knob. Now, of course, that is going to give us a little extra sustain. So you can just hold notes for days. And then last but not least, we've got our filter knob. Now this thing has got a huge filter sweep on it. So it sort of goes like sounding like it's got a pillow over the amp, all the way to sounding like you're broadcasting through a telephone. But this pedal really delivers. It just sounds like the speaker's been ripped up with a knife almost. And that's our pedal of the week, the Way Huge Swollen Pickle Jumbo Mach 3. Well, thank you for tuning into the Guitar Department. I'm your host, Joe Alton. I want to thank Bryce for being both the producer and the cameraman on this episode. I want to thank Riemann Music for giving us a place to shoot this show and for supplying, again, this beautiful Fender Showmaster, this beautiful Fender Blues Deluxe Junior, and the Way Huge Swollen Pickle, our pedal of the week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/The Guitar Department, and be sure to check us out next time right here on The Guitar Department.